Welcome to the Are You Serious channel on YouTube. This is a place to dig a little deeper on specific topics where I give my take and then respond with another episode based on your comments, feedback, and what is happening in the world around us. Today's topic, white privilege. It's in the news, all over social media, and I keep repeating the same sentence every time I hear someone say it doesn't exist. Are you serious? It exists, people. Let me show you how and why it exists. Then we can work together to stop it. But first, let's get something really important out of the way. How can so many people argue and falsely claim that white privilege does not exist? I mean, it's not difficult to see white privilege. So why do some claim white privilege does not exist? Because it's beneficial to white people and they don't want to lose it. Now that I have that out of the way, let's begin with some basics. It's not your fault. If you're white, you have it. Sorry, it's a genetic disorder and you have it. Great news though. You can help remove it. But more on that later. This is a wake up call for white people. It's about damn time we did something to help instead of just letting things happen. Hopefully by now you've learned, like me, that not being racist isn't enough. We have to address these issues if we expect people to change. Part of understanding white privilege is knowing it's not about you. It's about the additional burden placed on people of color, the added daily pressure. Look, chances are you weren't born into privilege in the white traditional sense of the word, but we all know that membership has its privileges, and being white is a privilege in this world. Compare yourself with people of color. Can you start to see the white privilege that exists in everyday occurrences and interactions? Like going to get coffee, going to restaurants and bars, hailing taxis, your name on a job application, representation on film and television, in all aspects of education and housing, and racial profiling. I mean, the list goes on. And please note just how many people of color are classified as essential workers today. And thank you to all. But white privilege has deadly consequences. And white people leveraging law enforcement against people of color is not only despicable, but it's the epitome of weaponizing white privilege. Why does it exist? Well, time for a history lesson. The way I see it, white privilege is one of the byproducts of white supremacy manufactured over hundreds of years. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, right. That's a lot to unpack in one episode, so I promise we'll revisit this statement in quite a few episodes down the road. But for now, let's focus on all men are created equal. Take a moment and consider how many people are still fighting for equality today. Consider that slavery began in the U.S. around 1630. In 1850, the Fugitive Slave Act passed, which mandated government participation in the capture of escaped slaves. Can you begin to understand systemic now? In 1863, Lincoln changed the legal status of Confederate slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation. And in 1865, the 13th Amendment prohibiting slavery is ratified. This is great. But what about that exception? Except as punishment for a crime. Sounds reasonable. But what crimes? We'll get to more on that later. In 1866, the KKK is formed, and they are still around today wearing polos and carrying tiki torches. Do you have to ask why? In 1868, we get the 14th Amendment, which defines U.S. citizenship. Let's focus on without due process of law and deny any person equal protection of the laws. Come on, are you serious? History has demonstrated this is not the case and still not present today. 1870 brought us the 15th Amendment, the right to vote. But again, people in power were still not serious about equality, as discriminatory practices are used to prevent blacks from exercising their right to vote until the Voting Rights Act of 1965, nearly 100 years later. In 1877, the era of Reconstruction, which were efforts to protect the civil rights of African Americans, ends. And soon after, in 1881, Jim Crow laws emerge, focused on segregation. These separate but equal laws would last for decades. In 1954, the Supreme Court, in the case of Brown versus Board of Education, ruled that segregation is unconstitutional, thus ending separate but equal across the land. Awesome, right? Nope. Try again. In 1955, this beautiful woman, Rosa Parks, does not give up her seat on a bus for a white man. She is arrested. Are you serious? Still think people don't think this way today? Still think white privilege does not exist? Are you paying attention to what is happening? Come on, Karen. In 1964, the Civil Rights Act is signed prohibiting discrimination. It took so many lives to get here, and still no equality. As noted earlier, in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, outlawing practices to disenfranchise black voters. Like everything else related to people of color, equality is still a struggle. Suppressing the vote of people of color is still practiced today, and it's definitely more prevalent than voter fraud. Lynchings in America are a tragic part of our history. They were used as a deterrent to protect white women and control people of color. Lynching was a tool to maintain white supremacy, which gave us white privilege. I encourage you to learn more. Read a book like 100 Years of Lynching to understand just how bad it was and why we have to finally put an end to white privilege and create true equality for all. But equality can't happen without doing something about mass incarceration. 25% of the global prison population is in the United States, while we represent less than 5% of the world's population. Whites make up 60% of the population, but are less than 40% of the prison population. Discriminatory enforcement practices such as racial profiling and differential treatment by prosecutors have led to this issue. There is no equality in bail or sentencing. More white privilege at work. So how and why does it exist? The real honest, simple answer is because we've allowed it to. We've enabled it. We have been complicit. Time for us to be serious about ending racism by starting with ourselves. We can help end white privilege. Disagree? Tell us why it doesn't exist. Comments are open. It became clear to me after listening to author and activist Kimberly Jones' statement on being lucky that black people are looking for equality and not revenge. Her comment stopped me immediately. Why should any group of people living in America have to fight for what our founding fathers called a self-evident truth, that all people are created equally? No one is looking for an advantage. They want equality. Why is this so hard to understand, let alone achieve? And why are we still struggling with this in 2020? Sorry to burst your bubble, but let's get back to it not being your fault. Fault belongs to us all. Now you know you have it. It's on you going forward. So tell me, what are you going to do about it? This is our problem. The issue has never been resolved, and it's up to us. Each and every one of us can make it better. It is a choice. The problem is enormous, and we can't wish it away. It is entrenched in our history, and we cannot erase 400 years of suffering. The system was designed and built this way. It has to be fixed. What we must do is call out when we see it. We must listen to people of color. We must work with them, not as saviors, but as allies and equals. We have to actively demonstrate it. We have to demand it collectively. We have to vote on the national, state, and local level. We have to hold each other accountable. We're all in this together. Ending white privilege will help end racism. No more benefits for simply being white, and no more burdens for being a person of color. Are you serious about ending white privilege and racism? Thank you for watching. The next video will be my comments based on your comments and feedback to this video. So click subscribe, ring that bell for notifications, and after leaving me your comments so we can continue the conversation. And if you have a topic you want to discuss, let me know so we can get serious again.